a selection of limericks from a book of nonsense by Edward Lear. This is a Limericks recording. All Limericks recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit limericks.org. Recording by Zoe Shenman.
Carly Wiggins.
And Leaf Shinneman.
There was an old man who supposed that the street door was partly closed, but some very large rats ate his coat and his hats, while that betrayal old gentleman dozed.
There was an old man of the Isles, whose face was pervaded with smiles. He sang high-dum-diddle and played on the fiddle, that amiable man of the Isles.
There was an old person of Tartary who divided his jugular artery, but he screeched to his wife, and she said, "Oh, my life! Your death will be felt by all Tartary."
There was an old person of Prague who was suddenly seized with the plague, but they gave him some butter, which caused him to mutter, and cured that old person of Prague.
There was an old man of Peru, who watched his wife making a stew. But once by mistake in a stove she did bake, that unfortunate man of Peru.
There was an old man of Leghorn, the smallest that ever was born, but quickly snapped up. He was once by a puppy, who devoured that old man of Leghorn.
There was an old man of Hague whose ideas were excessively vague. He built a balloon to examine the moon. That deluded old man of Hague.
There was a young lady of Turkey who wept when the weather was murky. When the day turned out fine, she ceased to repine, that capricious young lady of Turkey.
There was a young lady of Norway who casually sat in a doorway. When the door squeezed her flat, she exclaimed, "What of that?" This courageous young lady of Norway.
There was a young lady whose nose was so long that it reached to her toes. She hired an old lady whose conduct was steady to carry that wonderful nose.
There was an old man of Quebec. A beetle ran over his neck, but he cried, "With a needle I'll slay you, old beetle," that angry old man of Quebec.
There was a young lady of Poole whose soup was excessively cool, so she put it to boil by the aid of some oil. That ingenious young lady of Poole.
There was a young lady of Parma whose conduct grew calmer and calmer. When they said, "Are you dumb?" she merely said, That provoking young lady of Parma.
There was an old man with a poker who painted his face with red ochre. When they said, "You're a guy," he made no reply, but knocked them all down with his poker.
There was an old person of Sparta who had 25 sons and 1 daughter. He fed them all snails and weighed them in scales. That wonderful person of Sparta.
There was an old man on whose nose most birds of the air could repose, but they all flew away at the closing of day, which relieved that old man and his nose.
There was an old man of the north who fell into a basin of broth, but a laudable cook fished him out with a hook, which saved that old man of the north.
There was an old person of Tring who embellished his nose with a ring. He gazed at the moon every evening in June, that ecstatic old person of Tring.
There was an old man of Aosta who possessed a large cow, but he lost her. But they said, "Don't you see she has run up a tree, you invidious old man of Aosta?"
There was an old man from Nile who sharpened his nails with a file till he cut off his thumbs and said calmly, "This comes of sharpening one's nails with a file."
There was an old person of Troy whose drink was warm brandy and soy, which he took with a spoon by the light of the moon in sight of the city of Troy.
There was an old man of Cape Horn who wished he had never been born, so he sat on a chair till he died of despair. That dolorous man of Cape Horn.
There was a young person of Crete whose toilet was far from complete. She dressed in a sack speckled with black, that umbelliferous person of Crete.
There was an old man of a Bruzy, so blind that he couldn't his foot see. When they said, "That's your toe," he replied, "Is it so?" That doleful old man of the Bruzy.
There was an old person of Mole who shrank from sensations of cold, so he purchased some muffs, some furs, and some fluffs, and wrapped himself well from the cold.
There was an old person of Cromer who stood on one leg to read Homer. When he found he grew stiff, he jumped over the cliff, which concluded that person of Cromer.
There was a young lady of Clare who was madly pursued by a bear. When she found she was tired, she abruptly expired, that unfortunate lady of Clare.
There was an old man of Calcutta who perpetually ate bread and butter, till a great bit of muffin on which he was stuffing choked that horrid old man of Calcutta. End of selections from A Book of Nonsense by Edward Lear.